My name is Brian. I'm an alcoholic.
Brian.
I just wanted to first say thank you guys for all the messages I got on my birthday. You guys really made a guy feel loved. My sobriety date is September 2nd, 2022. I was born right here in Glendale. Always just lived around here, Burbank, Glendale, Pasadena area. So I guess it all starts with my parents. They got divorced when I was 4. And so my mom raised me primarily. I'd see my dad maybe like 1 weekend a month, that kind of thing. And then he got remarried and he got promptly divorced. And then later on my mom got remarried and she got divorced. That was all before I was like 18 or 19. But growing up, my mom was a stockbroker, so she would drop me off at school. She was like, it would crack it on. As soon as those gates for school were open, I was dropped off. And I was like always one of the last kids to get picked up or whatever, kind of like after school care. And a good portion of the times, she'd pick me up after school, and then she was a stockbroker, so they'd all go out to dinner. Sushi, Mexican restaurants, that kind of thing. And those were long dinners. Those were like 2.5 hours, and that was just a lot of drinking. So I grew up thinking that was totally normal to see a bunch of adults just get wasted for a couple hours during the week. That was just status quo. I remember falling asleep in booths all the time on my mom's lap. So that's in my family. I'm like Scottish, Irish, Italian, so there's plenty in my family that have the disease. And even my uncle, when I was 7 years old, they found him in a hotel room in Tahunga, and he was really close. I was really close with him, and I remember telling my parents like, "Oh, I'm never gonna do anything. I'm never gonna do drugs or anything like that." And that's a promise I couldn't end up keeping. But anyways, so life was pretty good. My mom did the best she could. She sent me to like Catholic school and just Christian private schools. And I was a fairly good kid until probably like I hit 14 years old, something like that, like the beginning of high school. And I was kind of a latchkey kid because she worked a lot of time. And I also played a lot of sports. I played 4 sports in high school, and that gave me the opportunity to always say like, oh, we've got a tournament somewhere, or a travel tournament, or practice went late. So she never questioned if I didn't come home on time, or I had a good alibi. And the other thing that afforded me in high school was that I liked to play sports, but I didn't really get all that get along with all the guys that much. I liked to hang out with the skaters, and the guys liked to party, and that kind of thing. But that was like a good alibi, because as long as I kept my grades decently and played all those sports, kind of kept me out of trouble. I would get in trouble sometimes, and the athletic director would come out of the dean's office and just kind of look at me and give me a ring, like I smoothed it over. Like, okay, but that enabled me to get away with a lot of things I shouldn't have. So I just kept partying through high school, kind of slacked off. But I ended up getting a scholarship for UC Santa Cruz, and I decided that I wanted to stay in town with all my friends and stuff and not go there. So I didn't do that, and I just took a summer job in construction right after. And it was my mom moved away with my stepdad. They were about to get divorced. But right before that, they sold the house and they just got an RV and they're going to travel. So I didn't have anywhere to stay. So I told them I'm going to go get my own apartment then. And they're like, no way. And I'm like, oh, watch me. So I went and got a roommate, got some shitty little apartment in Glendale, and that became a little party pad for a couple of years. I was still doing construction. I'd get up at like 5:30 in the morning to go to work, take a shower, and there's still people on the couch wide awake partying. I'm like, wow, okay. So that continued for a long time until he was like smoking a joint outside, and the cops came and he went to the door and didn't have his ID, and then they walk in and see all sorts of stuff everywhere. And he ended up going to jail, and I ended up going on to jail too because he was growing weed in his closet and I was paying the power bill. So yeah. And then so after that, I went and stayed with my dad for just a little bit until I could move out on my own again. And I just did the same thing. I would just work and then just party all until the early hours. And I remember one time I woke up the next morning and I'm like, I didn't even remember driving my truck home. And I see my truck out the street, and I walk up and I see all this dried red on the door. I'm like, holy shit, like, it must have been throwing up blood or something like that. And then I look in there and I see a bag of Flaming Hot Cheetos, and I'm like, oh shit, I just must have just scrolled right outside onto the door. Didn't even realize it. But the fact that I even thought that I could have possibly, because I would drink so much, that thought that already ran through my head that maybe I'm throwing up blood and drinking so much. I didn't, once I realized it was Cheetos, okay, no problem, whatever, just keep moving on. So I eventually got an apartment by myself, a little studio apartment right down there on Del Mar Lake. And if you're familiar with that area, there's a lot of bars and restaurants down there. So pretty much every day after work, I'd come home, take a shower, get cleaned off, and I wasn't driving, I just walk over to all the bars. And after doing that habitually, you pretty much know all the servers and bartenders at all those places, so I'd get hooked up or end up starting dating one of the bartenders, and they'd be like, oh, just wait till I close, and in there till the end of the night. So for a while I thought it was kind of just social drinking. I never would like really drink too hard on my own. It was usually, but when I did party with friends, that kind of thing, I would drink until everything in the house was gone. If there was, a quarter of the bottle left, and even if everybody's asleep at that point, I'd be like, okay, just finish this. And that's how it was. And then I met my wife in my late 20s, and I think she just thought I just liked to have a good time. So my mom, because she worked all the time on the weekends, she'd take me to cool places kind of to compensate for the lack of time we spent. So I knew like all these neat places like Solvang, Redondo Beach, and Queenberry. Like every weekend we'd have a little mini vacation here. I'd get a hotel room and stuff, and we'd just have a good time for the weekend. And I think she just thought I just, like I said, just like have a nice time on the weekend. And then eventually she got pregnant and we got married. And when she got pregnant, that's when I kind of started to hide the drinking, because she's obviously not drinking when she was pregnant. So that turned into me hiding bottles in my golf bag and grog everywhere. It was like Easter egg hunting. You could find them pretty much everywhere. And I'd forget where I put them. And then she'd find the empty, like, what's this? And I'd just be like, that's old. Yeah, I mean, after the 100th time you said that's old, that excuse doesn't go very far. So there was, I'd say, a good chunk of years, maybe 5 or 6 years, where I think she was just putting up with me. I don't really know that she still loved me that much, but I had 2 children, like 7 and 9. And when they were younger, I think she just didn't want to break up the family, so she put up with it for a while. There were points where we'd go trick-or-treating, and we went to the neighbors just to have a couple of drinks before we went out trick-or-treating. But little did she know I had been pre-gaming the whole time before she got home from work. So by the time you had that with that little bit of drinking with the neighbor, she's wondering how I'm so sloshed after just a couple of shots with the neighbor. And she didn't know all my pre-drinking. But anyways, it was a big crowded night, Halloween. I somehow lost my family on trick-or-treating on Halloween. So yeah, that was embarrassing. She said, where the hell did you go? And I wasn't checking my phone, couldn't find them. That was just one of those many embarrassing moments. So that kind of thing was going on, and then it all kind of came to a head on my son's birthday, April 2022. And I took it, we were getting ready to celebrate his birthday, and it was during COVID, so we were going to have it like just in the backyard. And I told my wife I'd just stay home and decorate and get the house ready and stuff for everybody. And I drank 3/4 of the day, and then for 1/4 at the end of the day, just tried to make a thin-veiled attempt to look like I had done something all day. And I was sitting on that front porch with the family, and my son gets some toy, and I'm trying to open it, put it together, and I'm having a hard time with the toys on a 7-year-old or 6-year-old at that time. And it was embarrassing. I think most of my family knew that I was drunk. And then the next day, my wife kind of lays into me on it. And I did what I would often do if I felt ashamed and disgusted. I just woke up the next morning and I continued to drink because I was hungover and I felt like shit. And I started drinking that morning. And later that day, I got a DUI in the company work truck. And went to jail, and I lost my job. And I called my wife from jail. And she told me she planned on getting divorced. So I was like, oh shit. So I lost my job, got a DUI, and was looking at a divorce all in just less than half a day. So I was out of the house. I went to my dad's to stay, and I was staying in his garage. And there was like for 4 months, I just stayed in there. Just like, woe is me. I'm not gonna get back to my family. I ended up getting served with divorce papers, and I was just. I didn't care about anything. I had a big case of fuck-its. And I had a therapist that I was working with online, and eventually she's like, have you ever thought about like outpatient or inpatient, like rehab? For whatever reason, I was open to that idea. So I knew myself, and I knew that if I just didn't like jump on it while I was even just slightly open to the idea, that I wouldn't do it. So I got on the phone, and the next morning I got picked up, and I went to rehab up in Arcadia. And I didn't know what to expect, but I went up there, and I noticed that there was a group of guys there that were really outgoing, welcoming, and kind of helping me, show me the ropes, and make me feel comfortable there. And they all recommended, they called them 7 and 7 meetings. There's a 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. and they were like an AA format meeting. And they were voluntary, you didn't have to go, it wasn't required. But so I started going to those like the second day I went there. And I went to every single one after that. And that's when I really started to kind of feel like some of that fellowship, that really like, hey look, there's more, it's not just you. There's a lot of guys here that have the same thing, you're not unique in any way. So I did that. And then I got back home, and my wife told me, under the condition that I stay sober, that she'd let me try one last chance at the house. So I miraculously, by the grace of God, was able to get back in that house. And I tell you, not one person would have bet even 50 cents that I would have made it back there. I mean, there's just no way. And right after that, I got back, and I knew that the work wasn't over. Rehab was not a fix-all. I started going to meetings. I went to that Sunrise meeting. I wasn't driving because of my DUI, so I'd ride my bike from my house up on North Lake, all the way down there, and it was that freezing cold, wet winter. And I'd make sure I was there every morning, no matter what. And I would go to 2 meetings a day sometimes. And I felt like shit for a while, but then I started coming to some of these meetings, and I just realized I got a lot of good stuff out of it. I met a lot of good people. And I realized this might work if I stick around. Like one of the first times I came to this meeting, Aiden was kind enough to volunteer me for a commitment to help with cakes. That was the first meeting. But that was a good thing, because I was not used to getting out of my comfort zone. But he did that, and I'm happy he did, because it's something I kind of try to put into practice all the time. If it's something I'm uncomfortable with, kind of try to just grab it by the horns. And it's generally something I don't think I want to do, and once I try it, I find out I'm pleasantly surprised. So I have a sponsor today that I work with, and I go to these meetings regularly. I have commitments at the meetings, and I love that the last retreat we went on. It was an awesome time to get to know everybody better, and I know that's an important part of it. Just the book's important, the fellowship. It's not just one part of it. I have to do all of that. I've also learned a lot of things in this room. Like my mom, she's not in the best health, but I've heard, like just recently, a lot of guys talk about their parents passing away and how they dealt with it. Because that was one of those things I would think about, like in the back of my head. If she died, like that'd tear me up when I go out or relapse. But after hearing a lot of the guys, it's really reassuring to know that you don't have to do that, as long as your program is strong. So yeah, things are a lot better. I just went to Knott's Berry Farm the other day with my family, and it was that on Saturday when it was my actual birthday. I was getting all these text messages, and then I just in this moment we were on that little swing that goes around, raise you up high. It was just right after nighttime. It was dusk. It was a beautiful night out. And I don't know why, it's just so calm. And my family, they're both there in the little swings next to me, and I just realized, like, I'm not raging. I'm not having a crazy time. Just at peace. Just it was. I don't know. I got like this feeling of like serenity. I'm like, you know what? This year has been worth it to have, because the option was, who knows where I would be. Definitely not at home. Probably. The options are most definitely. But yeah, I'm used to that feeling. I've heard people say, like, don't misconstrue like that calm and peacefulness with like it being boring or something. Because it's not boring. I was just used to life always being chaos, hiding shit, forgetting what I was doing, talking to a client, and then seeing the phone call. I'm like, oh shit, what did I agree to or tell them? Like, who knows? And then I still, a couple months back, I had a dream where I relapsed in my dream, and I woke up, and I'm like, holy shit. And I called my dad, I'm like, oh my god, I had the worst dream, I relapsed. And he says, you don't remember calling me? I was like, what the hell? And then I woke up from that dream. So it was a dream within the dream that I realized. And I'm like, that was a mind fuck. That really screwed me.
That'll shake you up. Inception.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And then luckily now my obsession's been lifted. I don't have many of those dreams anymore. Now it's less about the just focusing, just don't drink for today. Like that obsession's been lifted. Now it's just more about these principles and it's more about just the idea of just becoming a better person. I mean, I'm always amazed that the guys in here, I can't imagine us and the way that we were when I hear the stories, because I see everybody in here is like such great people. It's just hard to wrap my head around sometimes the fact that we weren't like this at one point, but thank God that we are. And God's been a big part of my journey too. Luckily I went to private school, Christian school, so that wasn't that hard for me to wrap my head around. I always believed in God, I just didn't have the greatest relationship with God. So that has helped immensely. And then like even today, now my wife, she's a normie, and she's actually been sober a month or 2 months less than me. She was decided to help me out too by making that commitment and just not having alcohol in the house or drinking. And then she goes on company trips or something like that around with her girlfriends. I don't ask because it's not my business and I don't want to know. But if she wants to drink, that's fine with me. But I'm amazed that she's put up with everything she had. I couldn't have done it without her, I'll tell you that. But the fact that she's been such a strong support, it's a testament. She's a very strong woman. And, I'm sure to thank her all the time for it. And the only thing I can do with that is, I mean, I wore out sorry, so I just try to make that living amends to her and my children. Because there's a lot I have on my TV, I have the photos, it's linked to the TV as like a screensaver. And there's pictures that'll pop up sometimes when the kids were really little, and I'm like, that's a cute picture and all, and I can't really place the event, you know what I mean, or remember much of it. And that bums me out, because that's time I won't get back, like I said, but hopefully, God willing, they don't ever have to see me like that ever again, and they're at an age where it'll be like they'll remember it. Maybe my daughter will remember it, my son maybe not as much, but it'll just be a distant memory. And hopefully, if this program, that's another thing I'm always worried about. What if it happens to my children and they end up having sickness? You know what I mean? I'm glad that I found the program, because maybe one day I can show them some of the stuff I've learned in here and have the tools to help them avoid the mistakes I've made. Hopefully, maybe it's a tough one. But yeah, I really appreciate all the guys in this room. It's a very welcoming meeting. I love these men's stags. They're my favorite meetings for sure. That's about all I got. Thanks for letting me share.